were brought against him just didn't stick, and people reacted to it.
Ted Cruz supporters across the nation are celebrating and sticking it right in the face of those who fall for Trump and Kasich. We took Wisconsin. The tide has turned. Things will be different from here on out. Call the ball on whatever slam you want, and it's out there. It's all very well. There should be time for celebrating at a time like this. But everyone now has to start thinking about what will happen on that convention floor and in the back rooms of Cleveland. In the stark reality, none of these followers wants to tackle really head on. This is where we kick off the hump day version of the political animal, demanding answers from simple questions, which is more than what blowhard pundits do when shoveling their brand of partisanship. Let's get into it with the senior contributor at the Federalist, D.C. McAllister, and veteran Democratic media strategist at Cate Communications, Franco Ripple. Good to see you both again. D.C., let's start with you. Look, the math gets harder for Donald Trump with a Wisconsin loss. There's no doubt about it. But aren't the Ted Cruz people just a little bit overboard right now? You won one, but you've got New York, Pennsylvania, California, and if you look at the math-wise still, Donald Trump still has the edge to get that 1237.
Yeah, but he has a lot harder time to get the majority. I think the celebration is that puts a big stumbling block in his way to getting the majority. And the other thing is that Ted Cruz had a lot of negative press brought against him, a lot of salacious things brought against him last week, and it just showed that he was able to overcome it. The people in Wisconsin have confidence in him, and I do think that while there was a never Trump component to this election, that he was definitely, it was pro Cruz as represented by Scott Walker. And he came out and said, this is for Cruz, it's not just against Trump, which is, I think, great moving forward.
Franco, I'm going to come to you on the strategist side of things here as we talk about right and left. Stay with right here for a couple minutes. What DC said is exactly right. There are salacious things that are sitting out there. Look, it happens in every campaign. This is really nothing new. But aren't we at a point right now where it doesn't matter a difference whether it's left or right, whatever. If you've got evidence of something, let's see the evidence, because this basically takes away from running the country, from getting to the right president, from getting to the one that people want. Prove it or shut up.
Well, sure. And so, first of all, the Trump campaign said that they had absolutely nothing to do with some of the salacious things that have been said about Ted Cruz. Whether or not that's true, don't really know. But what we know is that when campaigns start to become a threat to other campaigns, when campaigns start doing well, like Ted Cruz has started to become an actual alternative to Donald Trump in some of these states, which is, it's hard to even say that sentence and think it's true, it's laughable, then we know that funny business starts to happen. And so, but the truth is, like you said, it is a distraction to hearing what Republicans say they would actually do to govern this country.
Let's talk about that contested convention for a moment here, because even Bernie Sanders is making noise as if he's thinking about getting to that point, Franco, which is even more remote, if you will. But isn't it fair to say, Franco, from that strategist standpoint right now, left, right, wherever you're sitting, you're already starting to talk to people, make a little, hey, how are you, shake hands, think about cutting those deals, because especially in Cleveland, you're going to need that now, not when you get there the day of. They've got to be ready. Everybody's got to be ready for that before they hit the floor.
Well, absolutely. You have to start to lay the groundwork by softening up your primary target, by making relationships. And that's something, for example, the Ted Cruz campaign, which has probably been, looking back at it, the strongest run campaign of any of the Republican candidates in this primary in terms of organization. The Cruz campaign is really the only one that was doing some of the actual work of delegate organizing. And it's hard to believe that other campaigns like Trump's, who they finally just hired a veteran delegate organizer, that they would just be getting to this now. So yes, the Cruz campaign has been absolutely taking everyone to the house on the Republican side of the aisle in terms of actually being organized to prepare for what Reince Priebus now says openly will be a contested convention.
DC, let's look at something on the exit polls that came out of Wisconsin that I think has to start people thinking. 1 out of 3 Republican voters say they will, and again, this is just Wisconsin in the exit polls here, but they would abandon the Republican Party if Ted Cruz or Donald Trump is the nominee. How scary do you think that is right now when it gets down to the people at the RNC?
Yeah, if Ted Cruz or Donald Trump are not the nominee, they're going to revolt because they'd have to throw out the rules for that to happen. And even though the convention can definitely do that and the rules committee can definitely make changes to the rules, there's things that you can do that you shouldn't do. And even though they can throw everything out, it's just not fair to the people. And there's a rule out there called Rule 40, and that means that someone has to get 8 states, a majority in the 8 states, to be a nominee. And Kasich doesn't have that, and Paul Ryan doesn't have that, Mitt Romney only. Cruz will have that, and Trump. So if those two get thrown aside by the establishment with those kind of changes at the last minute, then you are going to have people abandon the party.
Then here's the next question. I only got 60 seconds left before we take a break and come back. Ted Cruz has got to unify the party. He says that he can. Wait a minute. We still don't see a lot of high-level people that are getting behind him here. We still don't see a lot of endorsements coming for him. And we still hear that most people in the RNC can't stand the guy. So has he failed completely, or is there still an avenue for him to unify this party? It doesn't seem possible.
Well, I think he can unify. I think he has. He's brought on board several endorsements. I mean, not everyone, and they're definitely not falling in love with him by any
Well, there's still a
means.
lot of people, you'll have to admit, that are pulling back. They're not getting involved with him. Marco Rubio won't talk about anything. There's a lot of high rankers who just won't even discuss it right now.
No, guys, let me hop in here for 1 second because I gotta be honest. I'm sorry. Ted Cruz is not unifying the party around anyone. The GOP is absolutely as fractured as it's perhaps been in more than 100 years. Okay.
Okay. Hang tight 1 sec, Franco. 20 seconds. Go, DC.
Well, I'm not saying he's unifying, that he's trying. He's moving in that direction. I think he's not going to be able to because the establishment has a plan. I think that they're conspiring to make changes at the convention. So if that fails and Ted Cruz is the nominee, I think he can bring them together to a degree. It is difficult.
The back rooms are going to be smoking if they're not already in Cleveland. Hang on, everybody. More to deal with in the animal. We kick back from the break, including another dose of reality, this time on the left, as a candidate would appear to have been exposed on the issues. Next on the Hardline. Hit the gas, turn left. Let's get to the second half of this political animal. From the Democratic side, Franco Ripple. From the Republican side, D.C. McAllister. Franco, coming right at you on this one. Bernie Sanders did an interview with the New York Daily News, and people are saying, quite frankly, that he blew it. He didn't know what he was talking about in half of the questions right here. He got the questions on the Fed wrong, breaking up the banks wrong. However, late today, Huffington Post comes out with an article saying, wait a minute, the Daily News editors didn't understand the difference between the Treasury Department and the Federal Reserve, so it's not nearly as bad as it looks. And Hillary Clinton piled on top of the senator's lack of a plausible plan. Here's what she said.
But Senator Sanders and I have some real differences about how we would go about achieving our goals as president. And like a lot of people, I am concerned that some of his ideas just won't work because the numbers don't add up. Others won't even pass Congress, or they rely on Republican governors suddenly having a conversion experience and becoming progressives. Well, in a number of important areas, he doesn't have a plan at all.
Franco, I've talked to a number of economists who agree with exactly what Hillary Clinton is saying here, that his plans don't add up as far as the math is concerned. And she says maybe he's not even a real Democrat. End of the day, is any of this going to stick?
Well, first of all, I think I have been clear in saying I think Bernie Sanders would be a better president than any of the Republicans that have been running or are currently running. There's
Stick
no
to the
doubt
left
about
now.
that.
Stick
But
to the left. Come on.
that being said, I am shocked by Bernie Sanders' performance in that editorial board. I really am. To me, it's a little bit close to a Rick Perry oops moment, because this is your issue that you are running on. You're running almost entirely your entire campaign on, and to not know some of the basics, to not know the authorities that the president has, that he would delegate to the Fed or to the Treasury. Look, it's not the New York Daily News or the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal's job to know the ins and outs of that, but it is Bernie Sanders' job to know that if that's the central part of his plan.
Would you not agree, though, that the New York Daily News needs to know the right questions to ask, and then Bernie Sanders also needs to know the right things to say when he catches them in a mistake, neither one of which happened here?
Yes, but I do think that they asked some of the right questions. They asked just like the right questions were asked of Donald Trump in his in his brutal interview as well. I think the right questions were asked. I think the bigger issue by far, and look, let's get off the economy for a moment and go to foreign policy. The fact that he said he hasn't thought a lot, quote, I haven't thought a lot about where Gitmo detainees would go, and that maybe they would be held for questioning in locales near where they were captured. It's an absolutely stunning display. It's a lack of knowledge on this issue. To me, that's more troubling.
There's a bunch of things in here that, quite frankly, I think Bernie Sanders, if he really knew his subject, should have said, wait a minute, you guys are wrong. That's not the Fed. That's not the Treasury. He should have corrected them, and he didn't. Let's go to something else. DC, I got to ask you about this because this is now just kind of making the rounds here. The Daily Show dug up a very disturbing video clip featuring Donald Trump. This comes from a 1994 episode of Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. They were talking about his parenting. His wife, Marla Maples, they were asking about what qualities, and this is Robin Leach asking it at the time, what qualities he would hope his then infant daughter would share with his wife. And here's what he said.
Donna, what does Tiffany have of yours and what does Tiffany have of Marla's?
Well, I think that she's got a lot of Marla. She's really a beautiful baby, and she's got Marla's legs. We don't know whether or not she's got this part yet, but time.
DC, there are people right now across the internet that are very concerned that Donald Trump would refer to his one-year-old daughter and he would take his hands and put them on his breasts to basically make some sort of a suggestion there. Is this much ado about nothing, or is this disturbing?
I don't think it's as disturbing as people are making out to be. It's kind of like when he said that he'd date Ivanka if he weren't her father. He obviously is not filtering his flattering remarks to his daughters. He obviously thinks they're beautiful, and that's what he's trying to portray to be genuine to Donald Trump. But I think he just doesn't have that filter. And what you're seeing is a man who says these kind of raw things and doesn't think it through. And we should be bothered by it, but I don't think it's deeply disturbing. I don't think he's a pervert or anything like that. I just don't think he thinks through what he's actually trying to say.
Do you think it's fair to say, 30 seconds left, though, that Mr. Trump, as he goes forward and he says he wants to be more presidential, he then has to watch the filter because people are going to be playing these things over and over again. They're going to dig up more in the background. So he's got to be more careful if he wants to protect himself in his campaign. Yes?
Well, there's nothing he can do about the things in the past, but he's definitely going to have to watch it going forward and be able to frame these in a more dignified way.
All right.
All I have to say is, as a parent and as someone who knows lots of parents with young kids, I don't know anyone who would talk about their kids that way. That's all I have to say about that.
It is the one thing that is out there. Again, we have to present it. And of course, the Trump people are going to say that this is a left-wing hit job because they're going to go right to the Daily Show and it's politics. And there are other people who are Trump haters who are going to say this is disturbing. People out there get to make their own selections, if you will. D.C. McAllister, Franco Ripple, always a pleasure to see you both. Thanks so much. Politics and strange bedfellows and what the past can teach us about what to expect in Cleveland come that Republican convention. It's next on The Hardline.